Let's start. So, online, I call it, so it's LibreOffice Online, but also Collabora Online. Collabora does a lot of the work. To avoid any ambiguity, I call it online. There you go. Excellent. What do? We do documents, spreadsheets, and slides. We do collaborative editing and viewing of all sorts of things. Tablets and mobiles included as well. And we're starting actually to use this code for running on your mobile phone and delivering the same mobile experience. We can import lots of crazy filters and things. So instead of downloading your PDF and seeing it in your browser, which works really well, you can render it on your server, which seems like a complete nonsense, and then get images into your browser. But there's some cool things we can do with that, like tiling it, making it impossible to copy and paste, restricting who can do things. Sounds kind of evil, doesn't it, at an open conference? But anyway, people want this. We can do Visio stuff, for all those people who weep because Visio has been removed from them, And I've met people close to tears because they're that low in the rung, you can't afford like $800 a year for Visio or something. We can help, which is good. Look at that, in the browser. Keynote, numbers, pages, although these formats change randomly and are undocumented, and we now only support older versions. And you can put this on-premise, and we integrate with anyone that wants to be integrated with. So if you would like to integrate with us, I had a talk earlier on how to do that, but this is quite similar. See me at the end. We'd love to integrate. But Nextcloud, OwnCloud, PyDOC file, lots of other things, our Fresco integrations at various places. And our architecture, the way we designed it, is a bet on CPUs getting cheaper and more thready, and network getting more powerful. So far, over my career, this has been a good bet. Let's see if it continues. So because we use LibreOffice, we have this very high fidelity WYSIWYG editing. WYSIWYG is thrown out of the window by a number of, well, if you look at Microsoft Office Online, for example, it's not a WYSIWYG editor. It doesn't lay out your pages. The viewing does, because it uses Word on the server to render your page. But the editing doesn't. You don't know where your footnotes are, your endnotes, your columns. You can't see where they are. Your page breaks are little lines in the thing. And so you can't position items on the page. They basically threw away WYSIWYG. And that's maybe a reasonable choice. The wiki did the same thing. But it's a shame to go back 20 years if you don't need to. Let me just show you a little bit about that. So here we have it. And I can type rapidly into it. That's always good. Typing shouldn't be done in public, but I got it exactly right, that string. So that's okay. So here we have a whole load of things. We can select text and delete it. We can undo it. We can do radical things like change tracking, which again is not available in Word Online. Like redlining, not there in Microsoft Word Online. Interesting. We can comment, and we can remove changes and accept them and reply to things and so on. And thus far, I don't think we have any integrations that go to page. So I don't even know that dialogue existed. So what else? We can do all sorts of cool stuff. So like we can format, we can do rich control of documents and format them in crazy ways. So there's all sorts of ridiculous options that we can be setting that typically aren't there in Office productivity suites. I don't know what people think of Asian typography options and so on. And actually we're quite good at this because we're reusing the same rendering. Even nasty RTL, Arabic, mixed Hebrew, Israeli stuff works and renders nicely. So it's pretty cool. There are a number of things you can't see here, but so scrolling works reasonably well because we're just flipping tiles in the client. There's no re-rendering going on here at the back end. Let me just show you how the rendering works. So if I press D in here, I get into debugging mode. And as I type, you can see the tiles that are being re-rendered. So those are ping tiles, and actually I can't type very well, so you can press a button and it'll type for you, which is pretty nice. And it's very classically educated, so it writes Latin, so that's all very good too. But you can see here how it's invalidating some tiles, and these guys, that actually you don't need a new tile, it's the same content. And so this works pretty nicely. Sadly, this is local, but we're using Amazon data centers on the other side of the world, and it works reasonably well. You can collaborate with lots of different people, of course. Which is quite fun, and this, if more people turn up, you get a drop down and avatars and fun like that. I think that's the quick demo. Let me see. Yeah, and so we have all of the interoperability support of LibreOffice. When a bug is fixed in LibreOffice, when new features come in, it's really easy we get all of that goodness, and hopefully we make it pretty. Using it is really simple. Who has got a content management system or something that has documents? Who does webby things like that? Any Nextcloud clients? Yeah, you got any things? Perfect. So you have some way to authenticate your end user in the browser, right? You have some kind of token, the JWT token or something. Anyway, there's some way that this browser and this server agree that they're trusted. Well, what you do is you pass this token down a WebSocket, or another token if you're paranoid. And inside your iframe, you simply talk to our server. And this server goes and talks to your other server using that token. And it has the world's most complicated API. So to load a document, we do a get. To save a document, we do a put. And that's pretty much the limit, although there is a check file info that says, tell me about this guy. You know, what's his real name? What's the file name? What's the timestamp on it? Can you give me more data? That kind of makes the experience more rich. But it's really easy. You can do this in a day if you're awesome, a week if you're slightly less awesome, but you know, and a month if you're, I don't know, where the least, you know, if you have to learn programming first, it's probably going to take you about a month. So anyway, do have a go and integrate it. I don't know why I've got this here, but basically we have a web server that's written in C++. We capture LibreOffices and trap them in chroot jails, which is actually quite secure, interestingly. So people get very worried about security, so they should. So we trap our LibreOffices. So we breed LibreOffices in the background, but we do it very efficiently. Our parents do all of the hard work, and then the children inherit all of that stuff. It's, you know, it's wonderful, isn't it? I know this happens a lot in the world. And so each instance already bootstrapped, its configuration is read, it's understood life with a real vengeance. And so you can start these things very, very quickly. It takes about 50 megabytes per document, something like that, in terms of memory, after you've done that. And then they live in very small chroots with nothing in them except their own document and maybe some fonts, no shell, no binaries. We put seccomp BPF around that. We have an amazing crash testing stuff to try and stop anything escaping. And so it's pretty cool. Even if you don't need a collaborative editing office suite, you probably need thumbnails of your documents. And so we have a very nice REST interface that reuses all of this for just converting documents. So you can do this curl command and pass your test file in, post it out there, say I want a PDF, and bang, out it comes. You redirect it, and there's your PDF. Beautiful. And it's all managed and lifecycle handled. And if it fails and it's a horrendous thing, it times out after 20 seconds, and you know you can't screw it up. It just runs, which is nice. One of the things we like is a full-featured Office suite. I've been a bit mean about my competition, who are lovely people, honestly. And I know a number of people at Microsoft who are just a pleasure, really a pleasure. In fact, Miguel is here somewhere, who is a hero. And look, they're a great company. But it's quite easy to have this bullet-checking approach to features. So, for example, Microsoft Online spreadsheet supports borders in cells, which is great. Problem is, if you want a thick border on the left but not the right, like there is no option for a thick border on the right. So presumably you can do a thick outside border and then remove the borders on the adjacent cells so that you then have the thick border you wanted, right? But I've got 15 minutes left. I only did 5 minutes so far. I'm nearly finished, really. I'll slow down. I'm sorry. It seemed like a very short time, 20 minutes. Lots of questions. I hope you'll, write them down. So we, in contrast, provide, just an amazing slew of functionality, diagonal borders. Try and find an Office suite online that supports diagonal borders. You'll have I don't know what they're for, actually, to be honest. But either way, they're there in the file format. The people want them. They have someone used them once, and we should honor that choice. And so lots of powerful functionality here. Random cell protection options. And you think it's pointless having a cell protection option until someone comes and they can't file their timesheet because the protection isn't right, and they can't remove the rows in the spreadsheet. Which, if you don't delete them, when you submit your timesheet, the online system crashes because it's written by a kid, and you don't get paid, which is brilliant, isn't it? So, sometimes granular protections are good. What else? Interoperability. So the current trend in interoperability is to think that using a DOM and XML is a panacea. So, why don't we just load the whole document into a DOM, everything will be wonderful, and perfect interoperability. So, the copy command has pretty much perfect interoperability. Occasionally it fails. But if you load the file in and save it out again without altering it in any way, usually it's 100% interoperable. Unfortunately, once you start to manipulate the data, it gets a bit more complicated. So actually understanding that this is a field, field-filled form, and you need to tab through it and fill data in, and you can't edit any of the rest of it and move it around. That requires a bit more intelligence and processing. And so actually, Microsoft gives up here very wisely, says, I don't really understand document protection in these sections, so I'm gonna give up at this point because I'll screw your document up. Similarly, if you can't calculate the spreadsheet, it's all very well to load it and save it back again, but when someone changes a number, it's a bit of a problem. I mean, I was on the OpenXML Standardization Technical Committee. I think there is no easy way to do interoperability well. Ah, excellent. That doesn't understand the document and do it well. So you need a real implementation somewhere. So I'll just show you some of the recent work that we've done to try and improve things. So reducing latency is one of the big things that we've been trying to do to make it work nicely across the world. So previously, for reasons of flow control, when you typed a key, it would send an invalidation. You saw that rectangle that was invalidated to the client. The client would go, all right, let's ask for a new tile. It would come back, it would render the tile, and it would go back again. Sort of more round trips than you really want. And you saw, I guess, how it was tiles. Now, instead, we preemptively push the tile, and it makes everything much quicker. So you lose a lot more round trips. You have effectively one round trip to the server, plus some microseconds or so of rendering time. And the problem is, of course, you don't want to do too much of that. We also then need to remember what you're looking at, the visible area. If you do this too much, you get a producer-consumer imbalance, and you start filling the world with tiles that aren't being received. So we only allow a few of them in flight. And it sucks to do your own flow control, but it really helps with latency. So there you go. What else? We've made our toolbar better. So the toolbar used to be gray, and now it's a different kind of gray. This is what's called progress. You can't go laughing at that, What else have we done? No, it's a nicer grey colour. And we've also got this Collabora icon theme, which is more colourful than the more monochrome one of the past. We've reorganised a number of bits of this to make it look more friendly and familiar. So you can click to rename your document in here, and it does a save as for you. And actually, that's a slight elaboration. It's not just put, get, check file info. There's put relative, something like that, which takes one of your family and incarcerates them. Happens a lot in some places, I hear. Anyway. So prettier icons, revision history happening here, last modification at a glance, and drop-downs for various things. Many more dialogues, more column formatting, more powerful data series stuff in charts. CSV import. There are some people who are still CSV junkies, Yeah. I mean, we know people who are RTF junkies who are still fighting the standards war before the standards war before last, which is quite good, really. Like 20 years ago. The open document format was rich text format. Anyway, governments are particularly good at that. What else? Shape editing. So previously, when you resize a shape, it would show you a blue surround here of what the new size was going to be, because we can render that in the client side as an overlay. We added some nice circular things, because circular things are good and square things are bad. Everyone knows this. It's true. You'd be amazed. Then we added a grab handle here so you could rotate it, which was quite fun. But we also have a preview now of the image. So as you scale it, maybe... No, it's not visible here. I don't know why it's not visible. But either way, as you're scaling it, you see this overlaid transparent preview of where the object is. And of course, that's just pushed into the client and rendered on the client. So it's very, very, very snappy indeed. There's no round trip. And when you finish, it relays out on the server. And that says the same thing with more graphical panache. What else? Yes, we need someone to create a 3D cube icon that isn't high color. If anyone has a mission, you could send me a patch, because it's kind of, the rest of it looks quite nice, and then you're like, yeah, it's all looking good, isn't it? Anyway, but you can insert images and shapes and custom shapes nicely. We are now blockchain powered, There's a company called Verein that is cool, and they're based in Switzerland, which is all good. And so instead of saving this get put whatever, you can get credentials from them and sign the documents and integrate it into their blockchain trivially, and that's built in, so you can log in with these wonderful things here. And then you can be, sure that that was indeed done, or at least things were done in this order at the times that actually they said they were happening and so on. And so there's loads of easy to reuse code here in terms of timestamping and PDF signing and document saving and so on. It's kind of cool. Nearly at the end. 5 minutes left, jolly good. So we've done a whole lot of easier to use stuff in terms of mobile devices. So are people who adopt a different approach to doing online Office suites, particularly on mobile phones, typically take about 40 seconds to load the JavaScript necessary to show a UI and render a blank document, which is quite a lot of code needed to run an Office suite. I mean, LibreOffice may be 150 meg of binary, but at least you're not downloading it to your phone and jitting it, you know. So that's quite a lot of battery and power and waste, and we can load these things in about 5 seconds, run it on the server, and take it to your phone, and it's just there, which is kind of nice. And of course, really nothing to do when you pan and zoom. It's all just the GPU flipping textures very quickly. And so we have now an edit mode that makes it even leaner when you start up. And yeah, much better multi-touch for, you know, sizing things. We try and show dialogues as is, so you get the full function set on your phone. Of course, dialogues aren't really designed for a mobile phone screen, so you can pinch to zoom and flip around and use all the functionality. And we're probably going to be improving this in a number of ways. High DPI stuff, we've done a whole chunk of work to make that prettier. The great joy of high DPI is that, you know, you have a 20 megapixel camera and you have a 1 megapixel screen, so you can buy a bigger CPU and throw all the data away beautifully. Now you can, you know, have a 20 megapixel camera and a 4 megapixel screen, and you know, the CPU can rest easier as it throws away less data. And the display controller can then shuffle it out at high speed and power. But anyway, there you go. This is also progress, just so you know. There's lots of other goodness here. So the Collabora icons I mentioned, scripting API support, lots of scripting stuff is going on. Because we want people to be able to, you know, add all of those things. I want to put fields in. I want buttons in my web app that embeds this, so I can insert names or library catalog numbers or whatever. And I can click these, and I can then manipulate the object model behind it using a Python script running in the back end inside that jail. And yes, GDPR, you know, I have to use the word GDPR. Does anyone know what it stands for? No, I'm joking. So we have all this logging system inside there, and it logs things like who logged in, what they typed, you know, all that sort of stuff. For debugging, you don't have to have it on, but it does write your name in there because you have to show it to the user. So anyway, but we can now anonymize it all as a switch that, you know, throws all the data away as it goes out in a nice way, and presumably hashes it with a salt and, I don't know, clever. Tile watermarking, I mentioned this earlier, so you can render your PDF or your document in such a way that the text isn't ever in the browser. So since you don't need to send the document to the browser, there's not necessarily any way to get the text out. So you can show someone a Word document, you can say you can comment on it, you can edit it, even redline it, but you can't download it, and you can't print it, and you can't copy-paste out of it. And some of these granular permissions are really, really useful, and it's just a few options you send to the WAPI call. Or maybe when you print it, it just has your name, like, all over it, right? Which is fine, you know, give it to your friend, but make sure he's really your friend and he's not going to, you know, give it to your boss or whatever, right? So that's kind of fun, and people like that for very secure things. Ah, yes, brilliant. So who's heard of composable operations and operational transforms? Who has met Svante Schubert? Yeah, so I don't have much time, but here's the thing. Computer scientists love them. They love them. Oh, they're so abstractly beautiful. The reality is the real world doesn't work like that. When we type something in a spreadsheet in LibreOffice, sometimes we duplicate the whole sheet because we don't know what changed. Like if you do some complicated sorting operation, we just keep what was there and have it on the undo stack. We don't do a precise this moved there and split it into these operations and then try and move them over other operations. Like so that you can do a sort with one guy and someone else changes a value, and then how do you compose these two together? Ridiculous. These things never happen, it turns out. 90% of the time, one user is editing the document, approximately 10% of the time, several people in a call editing the same document, minuting in a meeting. We do nothing to resolve conflicts. We could do a little bit for the easy cases. We actually don't do anything, and so far, almost no one has complained. Like we have, I forget how many users, 300,000 users, something like that. Those are the paying ones. We've got 10 million Docker image downloads and growing, like 12 million. Still no complaints about the lack of composable operations, okay? So maybe it could be you, you know, come and tell me, right? The problem with composable operations is that in order to compose these two operations or transform them over each other, it's not a CPU time problem. There is a computational programmer time problem. So for every operation you do, like sort a spreadsheet or insert conditional formatting, you need to understand how to compose two of these operations and move them, transform them over each other. Or, you know, make them of sub-operations you can compose. And the problem is this scales with n squared in the number of operations you have. But the n squared is programmer time, not CPU time, not memory, programmer time, which is probably the most expensive resource anyone has ever heard of. So if you want to know why Collabora Online, LibreOffice Online is extremely feature-rich, has loads of features, yeah, and Google Docs doesn't, consider the n squared for the poor old Google programmers. Anyway, we just bring it all into the same process, and it works nicely. And it scales. So we sit in the same process, and here's 5,000 people using it in a Spike in Holland, in Surf Drive, and here's the CPU, which, as you can see, is, yeah, there's kind of no processors in here anyway in this thing. It's some 2 CPU systems, I think 4 CPU. And, you know, this is the free RAM for going between 13 and 11 gig free. So, you know, we can scale very nicely without anything complicated. And that's me. Thank you for your patience. You've been very good. Was there some time for questions? Was that the...
Yeah, 4 minutes of questions.
4 minutes of questions. Perfect. Why don't you have 4-minute questions? Anyone?
I have a question.
Certainly, sir. Tell me.
Could it be possible to compile the LibreOffice rendering engine in WebAssembly and run it in the browser?
It's been tried using the LibreOffice rendering engine WebAssembly in the browser. The problem is it's big. It's 150 meg. And it does quite a lot of bootstrapping. So when you load LibreOffice on your laptop, you think, ooh, this is a big piece of code. And you're right. Although it's not finished yet, so it's going to get bigger. The thing is, when you load a Java application on your PC, you have the same problem. But when you run an EJB something or other, the Java bootstrap is all done. And so there's a huge benefit to the world generally of just doing that bootstrap once on one server and then using it for, you know, thousands of people. So I basically don't think it works. And also, if you're thinking of 150 meg of code going through WebAssembly on your mobile phone, which is the other claim, you know, because we did it in JavaScript, it runs everywhere. It's just not working very well, right? You know, the phone is melting through your fingers, and you know, and yeah. So it's possible, but so is pole vaulting blindfold. So yeah, cool. Thank you. Good question though. People do ask that a lot. Anyone else? Have I got 30 seconds? I will be outside afterwards, so come and harass me. So.
How much RAM did you say was on the server that was serving 40,000 users?
So that was going between 13 and whatever, 16 gig free. I think we say something like 50 meg a document and a gigabyte to play with and pre-init stuff in.